Hey church family, great to be with you again for another daily Devo. And today we're going to talk about 1 Timothy chapter 3. And here Paul is writing to Timothy and they're talking about the standards of leadership for the overseers of the church. Now if you go to the King James Version, they call them bishops. But we know this for a fact. We're talking about pastors and leaders within the church. And these standards are very high. And what Paul here does is he explains and gets right to the point on what he expects out of the leaders of our church. And he talks about that a leader should be blameless. A leader should be someone that has nothing in his past that you can take hold of, or not necessarily his past, but nothing currently that you can take hold of and use against that person or the church. Also, they need to be temperate. They need to have a good nature. They need to be sober-minded so they can make good decisions. They need to be of good behavior. They need to be hospitable. And they need to be able to teach. We have a lot of pastors at Willowbrook and they are all outstanding. I remember when I felt called to ministry, I remember getting in my truck one evening and listening to Jesus talk to me about becoming a minister. And it was a wonderful time. And then as I started talking to some of my mentors, I learned real quick that this is a calling that has a high standard. And at first it kind of scared me, to be honest with you, because I knew I wasn't perfect. And I had, all these things in my life that I didn't think I could be a pastor. I always looked at pastors as perfection. But I also know that pastors continue to grow every day in the Lord. And as they grow, a lot of these things they become better at. For instance, I was not very temperate before I became a pastor. I was not very temperate in my first career. As a matter of fact, my first career in the Army, it was promoted that I not be temperate. So those are things that God helped me work on, and I had to give over to Him in order to be a good leader in the church. And it's great to have mentors like Pastor Mark and Mark Johnson, Steve Lacey, John Stone, Jared Allen, Bobby Ann. These are all great examples of being held to a high standard for church leadership. And these people do it very well. And I just get the pleasure of working with them regularly. Paul in the second half of this chapter starts talking about deacons. That's another great thing we do at Willowbrook is our deacons are amazing and they are great servants. As a matter of fact, right now we are in the middle of selecting new deacons. And we don't take it lightly. The deacons gather, they have a board, they have a questionnaire, they interview everyone. And quite frankly, not everyone's ready to be a deacon. But they make sure they select the men that are ready to take a servant leadership role in our church. And thankfully, I am so thankful for our deacons. They do so much at both campuses, and it's wonderful to see how much they serve our church. And the last thing I want to talk about is that we read this about overseers of the church, we read this about deacons, but I want you to also read this and think about where you lead. Maybe you're a leader in the office. Maybe you're a leader somewhere else within the Huntsville area or wherever you may be watching this. Men, you're definitely leaders at home. Women, you're definitely leaders at home too with those men. And I just want you to know that these are great standards to strive for. These are high standards for church leadership and overseers, but they're also a standard that we should all be thriving to get to in order to help build God's kingdom and serve our Lord as He gives us these opportunities. Church family, it's always great to be with you for a daily Devo. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.